before the engagement, I received a gift from my boyfriend's childhood sweetheart, a black leather whip, and a video. In the video, my usually gentle and elegant boyfriend had her tied up. As I stared in shock, she smiled with satisfaction. Did you really think he loves you? This is already his 13th whip. Chapter 1. After being intimate, Damian's sweat hadn't completely dried yet. I glanced at him below. Should we continue? Honestly, I was already exhausted. He always had such good stamina. Every time. I was worn out before he even finished. A few times, I almost passed out. In this area, we weren't exactly in sync. Damian released his arms from around me, chuckling softly. Never mind. It's okay. I'll take a shower. You get some sleep. Then he wrapped a towel around himself and left. His well-built back, damp with sweat, glistened under the light, and his elbows had a faint pink tint. After a while, as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard my phone ring. Damian murmured something softly, and I felt a gentle kiss land on my forehead. There's a problem at the office. I need to go take care of it. You sleep first. I was so tired I just nodded vaguely and fell back asleep. I don't know how long had passed when suddenly my phone rang again. The sharp ringtone jolted me from deep sleep, and I groggily reached for the phone. It was Damian calling. Hello. What's up? There was no sound from the other end for a long time. Hello? Hello? After a moment, I heard faint, uneven breathing and the continuous sound of something snapping through the air, as if something was being sharply whipped. I was instantly wide awake. Damian, are you okay? It's nothing. After a few seconds, Damian's voice came through the phone. In the quiet of the night, his voice sounded distorted, with a suppressed groan. It's nothing. I just tripped going up the stairs. Baby, I miss you. I felt a twinge in my heart, a smile tugging at my lips as I couldn't help but tease him. How are you so clingy? You miss me already after just a little while? There was silence on the other end. After a long time, Damian spoke again, though his voice seemed a bit hoarse. Yeah. Chapter 2. Early the next morning, Damian was already back. Despite working late into the night, he appeared full of energy, showing no signs of exhaustion from the lack of sleep. I hugged him from behind, unable to suppress a tinge of jealousy. How can you be so energetic after a sleepless night? I just missed a few hours of sleep and can barely keep my eyes open. Damian turned around, embracing me with a pampering smile in his voice. We don't need too many hardworking people in the house. As long as I'm diligent, you can sleep as much as you want. I was about to respond when my pupils suddenly contracted. There was a conspicuous red mark on Damian's neck, in a rather suggestive location. Noticing the change in my expression, Damian's face remained unchanged. There were mosquitoes at the office. I got bitten several times last night. He casually touched his neck. It's still itching. Do we have any ointment at home? I was stunned for a moment. The position of that red mark was too coincidental, and its shape was hard to ignore. But how could it be? Damian and I had been together for so many years, and he had never shown any sign of infidelity. This was a man whose heart and eyes were filled only with me. How could he possibly betray me? After being together for so long, I should trust him. Yet, for some reason, there was an inexplicable unease brewing in my heart. I'm off to work. Damian was already dressed in his tailored Italian suit, exuding elegance in every detail. His gaze, carrying a faint smile, looked at me through the cool lenses of his glasses. He leaned down to give me a gentle kiss, his touch so light as if he was handling a priceless treasure. Be good and wait for me at home. After Damian left, I leaned on the couch, scrolling through my phone. A new friend request popped up on WeChat. I recognized the woman in the profile picture. She was one of Damian's childhood friends, a woman named Freya. I was a bit puzzled, unsure why she suddenly added me. Freya had grown up with Damian, practically like childhood sweethearts. However, Damian had grown to dislike her. Whenever we encountered her at gatherings, he would prevent me from interacting with her. He said Freya had lived a wild and reckless life while studying abroad. You two are not alike. She's a bit unbalanced. Don't get involved with her. That's what he told me. Indeed, in the few times I met Freya, she always dressed provocatively, moving through crowds of men like a social butterfly, sipping her drink. One moment, she would pat someone's arm. The next, she would lean on another's shoulder. She didn't mind when men tried to take advantage of her. Instead, she would joke and play around with them. To be fair, Freya's features were quite ordinary, the kind that would easily blend into a crowd. However, she possessed a unique aura. If you were being polite, you'd call it charm. Otherwise, you might say she was flirtatious, especially when she smiled. There was a certain allure about her. Men adored Freya, but Damian showed no interest in her. Every time she got close to him, he would coldly reject her. Once, Freya tried to lean on him, and he pushed her away without hesitation. Have some respect. It was clear that he really didn't like her. But Freya was never discouraged by Damian's indifference. Even after facing his coldness, she persisted in pursuing him, relishing in every encounter. As long as Damian was present, her gaze would always be fixed on him. I once heard from people in our circle that Freya had liked Damian since childhood. She confessed to him several times during school, only to be rejected. I felt a little uneasy, but I didn't pay much attention to it. After all, I was sure that Damian was fully devoted to me. But this time, for some reason, I instinctively opened Freya's moments. Her most recent post was at 4 a.m. This morning. In the picture, Freya's bright red nails gripped the phone. A black collar wrapped around her neck. She sat on the sink, her back to the mirror, head tilted slightly to one side. Her lipstick was a complete smudge at the corners of her mouth. Her features were ordinary, but her eyes were filled with seductive allure. In the mirror, her smooth, fair back was adorned with a black rose tattoo, crisscrossed with whip marks. The caption read, "Forever yours." Chapter 3. That night, I told Damian about Freya. Damian immediately went through our chat history. After seeing there were only 2 short sentences, his brows relaxed slightly, but his expression was full of disgust. Who knows what her problem is this time? Just ignore her. I still felt uneasy and wanted to ask more, but Damian pulled me into his arms, stroking my hair. Come on, let's get some sleep. We need to pick out your wedding dress tomorrow. Aren't you afraid you won't be able to get up? That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept dreaming, without a single pause. And when I woke up in the morning, my whole body felt exhausted. Yet I couldn't remember a single detail from the dreams. That evening, Damian's friends invited us to dinner, saying they were celebrating our upcoming engagement. During the meal, everyone congratulated us. 5 years of love. And finally, Bai is the lucky one. A match made in heaven. May you be together for 100 years. Come on, let's all raise a glass. Just as everyone raised their glasses, the door suddenly opened. Freya walked in, dressed in a black short dress, and everyone froze. Everyone knew that Freya had always liked Damian, so no one invited her to this occasion. We weren't sure how she found out and came anyway. Damian's smile faded, and he asked bluntly, "What are you doing here?" Freya flicked her hair. Though her face was plain, she had a unique seductive air. How could you not tell me about such a big event like your engagement? After all, we've been, she smiled, friends for so many years. Seeing things getting awkward, our friends quickly tried to ease the tension. Come on, have a seat over here. We didn't want to disturb you. That's why we didn't invite you. But now that you're here, let's drink. That night, Freya kept drinking and talking about her past with Damian. Don't be fooled by how gentle he is now. Back in school, he was tough. Once, a thug kept bothering me, and Damian beat him up after school, breaking his nose. That guy never dared to come near me again. Haha. She looked at me, her eyes filled with open disdain and challenge. Our friends were clearly uncomfortable, awkwardly playing along. Damian didn't say a word the entire time, not even sparing Freya a glance. The whole one-person show became more ridiculous as it went on. By the end, Freya was drinking heavily, until she was completely wasted. She looked at Damian for a long time. Damian peeled a shrimp and placed it on my plate, softly coaxing me, "Drink less and eat more, or your stomach will hurt." Freya suddenly let out a bitter laugh and, swaying, stood up and walked out the door. Damian's expression remained unchanged. But after so many years together, I could tell from the slight tension in his eyes that he was irritated. If you're worried, go check on her. I sighed. After all, you've been friends for so many years, Damian said indifferently. No need, she's not my concern. However, as time passed and Freya didn't return, Damian's expression grew darker, until finally, he stood up. I'm going to the restroom. After several rounds of drinks, our friends were all drunk, slouched in their chairs, but Damian hadn't come back yet. I went out to look for him and saw Freya being pulled by a middle-aged bald man. The man had his arm around her waist, trying to drag her out. Freya was too drunk to stand and didn't have the strength to push him away. Just as I was about to step forward, a figure suddenly rushed over and punched the man in the face, yanking Freya back. The man fell to the ground, about to curse, but when he saw Damian, he backed down, muttering as he got up and hurried away. Damian was furious, his eyes cold. I had no doubt that if the man had stayed a few minutes longer, Damian would have beaten him to death. He was always gentle and refined with me. I had never seen him like this. I stood frozen at a distance, watching as Damian grabbed Freya's wrist, full of anger, and yelled at her, "Are you out of your damn mind? You think you can just go with any man? What if I hadn't shown up just now? Were you really going to let him take you away?" Freya stared at him for a long time, then suddenly started crying and hugged Damian tightly, burying her face in his chest. I thought he would push her away, but he didn't. After a brief pause, Damian reached out and hugged her back. That night, Damian had a friend take me home. He said Freya was too drunk to be left alone and that he would take her home before coming back. But I sat on the couch until dawn, and he never came back. By noon, he finally returned. She caused too much trouble last night. After all, we grew up together. If something had happened, I wouldn't have been able to face her parents. He hugged me, his dark eyes full of affection. Baby, there's really nothing between us. Don't be upset, okay? Just as I was about to speak, out of the corner of my eye, I saw his coat pocket bulging. I reached in and pulled out the item, freezing when I saw it. It was an opened box of condoms. Chapter 4. On the day of my engagement, I sat in the dressing room, staring blankly at my reflection in the mirror. The makeup artist kept praising me. "Your skin is amazing. How do you take care of it? You're so beautiful. The groom is really lucky to have you." But I just stared at myself in the mirror, unable to say a word. Damian's explanation for the box of condoms was that Freya had deliberately put it in his pocket. She had always had a crush on him, jealous of our engagement, and was trying to sabotage our relationship. He was so sincere, swearing that he loved only me, the urgency in his eyes clearly genuine. I believed him. After so many years together, I had always trusted him. Damian had never betrayed me. Yet, my heart continued to race, as if another part of me was coldly mocking my self-deception. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, with solid rock beneath my feet, but not knowing when a gust of wind might come and send me plunging into the abyss. When the makeup artist finished and left, I was about to lift my dress and stand up, but I froze mid-turn. Freya had appeared behind me at some point, wearing a white backless gown, her body now adorned with fresh, striking scars. "What are you doing here?" I instinctively frowned. Freya held a red gift box in her hands, smiling as she handed it to me. "I came to bring you an engagement gift." The box landed in my hands, feeling light as air. Oddly, my hands started trembling at that moment, as if deep down, I had already foreseen the fate that was about to unfold. Freya looked down at me with a strange smile on her lips. "Aren't you going to open it?" she said. My fingers shook as I opened the box. Inside lay a black leather whip, quietly resting. At that moment, my heart became eerily calm. Every emotion, every thought disappeared in an instant, as if the entire world had vanished, leaving only the whip before my eyes. "Do you really think Damian loves you?" Freya leaned on the table with both hands, malice flickering in her eyes. "Every week he spends with you. He comes to educate me." She turned around to display the scars on her back, like a victor proudly showing off her battle medals. "He loves my back the most." I stared blankly. murmuring, "Impossible. The man I had shared over 1,000 nights with couldn't be like this." Freya chuckled softly, placing her phone in front of me. "I knew you wouldn't believe it. See for yourself." She played a video. The screen shook a bit before focusing on a bound Freya. Then, the silhouette of a man I would recognize even if he were reduced to ashes appeared. It was Damian, the same Damian who would kiss me tenderly each morning. He wore a suit vest. His white shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing his muscular forearms. His aura of dominance and control was as fierce as a beast unleashed. No longer concealed, the whip cracked through the air mercilessly. The very same whip that was now lying in front of me. I didn't know how much time had passed before Damian stepped in front of Freya. The gentle smile that usually graced his eyes was gone, replaced by an icy thrill. He looked down at Freya and spoke with an indifferent tone. "Have you learned your lesson? Are you going to flirt with other men again?" Freya looked up at him with adoration, her voice trembling. "I've learned my lesson. I won't do it again." Damian stared at her for a moment before his lips curled into a smile. He patted her cheek, his smile one of reward. "Good woman. Do you really know him?" Freya pointed at the box with her crimson nails. "Do you know his preferences? Do you know when he's the happiest? Did you know that he once told me being with you is as bland as drinking plain water?" She crouched down, her smile growing as she looked at me. "Damian and I are perfectly matched. Elena, you have no idea who the man sleeping next to you truly is. Do you know what he was doing when he called you that night? He was with me. I made that call to you. You were just a part of our game. You know that night he drove me home? Just because another man touched me. He was so furious. You saw that box, didn't you?" She squinted her eyes, smugly. "He only has the last one left. You were never meant to be with him. I'm the one who..." Her words were cut off. The door swung open, and when Damian saw the whip in my hands, he froze. I stiffly raised my head, slowly tasting the metallic tang of blood in my mouth. Wiping my lips, I looked down. My thumb was covered in blood. At some point, I had bitten my lip so hard it bled. Chapter 5. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Damian slapped Freya hard across the face. Freya staggered, but instead of getting angry, she smiled. Her eyes glazed over. Damian ignored her and frantically rushed toward me, trying to hold me. "Baby, listen to me. Let me explain." I looked up at him, calm, and said, "Okay, go ahead. Explain." Damian opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. Freya suddenly clutched the table and started gagging, her face pale. Damian exploded with rage. "Can you stop pretending? Freya? What the hell do you want?" Freya curled her red lips and pulled out a white pill bottle, tossing it on the floor. "Before I came to see you, I swallowed an entire bottle of sleeping pills. Damian, today you either come with me, or you watch me die." Damian picked up the bottle. His face changed dramatically. "Are you insane?" Freya laughed hysterically. "Yes. I'm crazy. I'm completely crazy. I've been driven mad by my love for you." Tears streamed down her face. "Damian, I've loved you for so many years. I've humbled myself for you to the point where I have no dignity left. No matter how you treat me, I take it willingly. My youth, my body, my whole being belongs to you. Every scar on my body was made by you. No one will love you as wholeheartedly as I do. Damian, without you, I'd rather die." As she spoke, she couldn't hold herself up any longer, her body slowly collapsing, white foam bubbling from her mouth. Damian finally snapped, cursing in shock. "You crazy woman." Then he picked her up, kicked open the door, and ran out. "Damian!" I called his name. He stopped in his tracks, turned around to look at me, his face hidden in the shadows, and I couldn't see his expression clearly. I only heard him say, "I'm sorry." Then he turned and strode away without looking back. I sat in the dressing room for a long time before coming out. My relatives and friends all looked at me with strange expressions. They had all seen Damian carry Freya out earlier. Everyone's eyes were on me, curious, amused, sympathetic. It felt like arrows piercing me, but my heart was numb. It was like the world was behind a glass wall. I could see all the emotions, joy, anger, sadness, but I couldn't feel any of them. A few seconds later, I spoke. The engagement is off. Let's just treat today as my treat for dinner. Chapter 6. The luxurious dress that had taken a French tailor 30 days to hand sew. I only wore for 2 hours. When I got home, I didn't rest. I immediately started packing. There was no urgent need to leave, but I had to find something to occupy myself. Otherwise, my mind would drive me insane. I had lived in this house for 5 years. Every corner bore traces of me. Leaving wouldn't be easy. I spent hours packing, but by nightfall, I had barely finished half. Outside, it had started raining lightly without me noticing, and Damian came home. Looks like Freya had been saved. He was still wearing his suit from the engagement, drenched from the rain, standing at the door, watching me pack. Neither of us said a word. It wasn't until I dragged my things past him that he finally spoke. His voice hoarse. "I'm sorry, Elena." I looked at Damian, and in that moment, I understood everything. He didn't hold me back like before during our past breakups, nor did he try to explain or beg me to stay. We both knew this time wasn't just another argument. He had made his choice. Why? My voice trembled. I felt pathetic, but I couldn't control myself. It had been 5 years. Even a dog would become attached after so long. He had become a part of my life. Every dream I had about the future included him. I never doubted that we would last. But reality delivered a cruel blow. In the most absurd way. To show me just how naive I had been. Those nights when I thought Damian was being considerate and gentle. It wasn't because he worried about exhausting me. It was because I couldn't satisfy his desires. The man I once thought was heaven's gift to me had been secretly seeing another woman every week. And he hid it so well. All this time, I never noticed. When we went to the temple to hang our love lock, I wished for us to grow old together. What was he thinking at that moment? Was he thinking about when he could go back and train Freya? Suddenly, I felt like throwing up. Was there even a point in asking? I already knew the answer. "I'm sorry." Damian lowered his eyes. "But she can't live without me. I made her this way. She can't leave me. I'm responsible for her. Elena, I really like you. I was sincere when I said I wanted to marry you." He paused, but today I realized I can't lose her. Strangely, all I felt in that moment was the urge to laugh. I didn't know if I was laughing at how ridiculous the world was or at how stupid I had been. 5 years, and all I got in return was that he couldn't lose her. I said nothing more. I pushed the door open and walked out. The door closed behind me, cutting me off from Damian for good. Chapter 7. I quickly resigned from Damian's company. He didn't try to stop me, only gave me a complicated look before approving my resignation and even giving me a hefty bonus. As I looked at the numbers in my bank account, I suddenly found it all a bit laughable. I had originally planned to stay abroad. After graduating from Stanford, I had received an offer from an investment bank on Wall Street with a $300,000 annual salary. But just because Damian asked me to come back and help him, I resolutely gave up $1 million job and returned to the country with him. For all these years, I had worked at his company. Every investment project had to go through me. In the early years, Damian worked tirelessly to prove himself to his father, and we often worked late into the night together, dragging our exhausted bodies home only to collapse into bed. I once thought that we weren't just lovers but also comrades, supporting each other. I had thanked the heavens countless times for giving me a soulmate who shared my values and ambitions. Damian would often hold me tightly in the middle of the night, saying how grateful he was for me, how much he loved me, how he couldn't live without me. But in just 5 short years, he no longer needed me. It turned out that I had never truly seen him for who he was. I rented a new apartment. It wasn't as luxurious as Damian's large, central city flat, but it was enough for just me. I intentionally chose a smaller place. I had begun to fear living alone in a big house. It was too empty, and sometimes the silence became unbearably loud. I learned about Damian and Freya being together from a friend. She hesitated for a long time before carefully asking, "Did you know Damian and Freya are together?" I froze for a moment, and I don't even remember how I hung up the phone. The autumn rain drizzled down outside, carrying a chilling melancholy as it tapped against the window. In truth, I should have seen it coming. It was only a matter of time, but hearing it with my own ears still felt like all the strength had been drained from my body. leaving me weak and limp. Every day since, I watched Freya flaunt her love. They went to the Akita fireworks festival together. That was the same fireworks show Damian had once promised to attend with me, the one I had dreamt of countless times. But now he was holding someone else's hand under that same sky. They went to Disney together and kissed in the same spot where we had once taken pictures. Every trace I had left in his life was slowly being erased. They tattooed each other's names on their chests. The very chest I had once rested on countless times, now marked with another woman's name. Freya wrote, "Together, through morning and night, through all the seasons." I tortured myself by looking at those photos. Even though my heart was so numb from the pain that I could no longer feel it, they really did look happy. Happier than when he was with me. Damian eventually contacted me too. He called me. "How have you been lately?" I didn't say anything, and he sighed before continuing. "I know I've wronged you, and I really want to make it up to you. If there's anything you want or if you ever need anything in the future, just let me know. I'll do my best to help you." I knew it wasn't longing, it was just guilt. Once he felt like he had made amends with material things, he could completely detach himself. It was strange, we had only been apart for a few days, yet his voice felt so unfamiliar. I couldn't remember the sweet things Damian used to say to me. All I could recall was the cold, excited voice from that video. Maybe it was because I hadn't eaten dinner, but my stomach suddenly churned, and I practically crawled out of bed, rushing to the bathroom to throw up violently into the toilet. I didn't stop until I felt like I had thrown up every last organ inside me. When I finally pulled myself up, my pale face was smeared with tears, but my eyes were bloodshot. Damian, on the other end, panicked. "Elena, what's wrong?" "Baby." I leaned against the wall and hung up the phone. Then I pulled out the SIM card, tossed it into the toilet, and flushed it away along with the filth. Chapter 8. After leaving Damian, I started dreaming about him night after night. In the dreams, it was always that snowy day when we first met. My hat was blown over my eyes by the wind. I tripped and slipped, screaming as I couldn't stop, and the man in front of me didn't have time to react. He instinctively caught me as I crashed into his arms. We both fell to the ground, with him cushioning my fall. I was flustered, my face covered by my hat, and I stammered out an apology. He hissed in pain and lifted my hat. It's been 5 years. I still remember the snow that day, glowing warm yellow under the streetlights, like golden powder falling from the sky. His long eyelashes fluttered as the snowflakes fell off, and he froze for a moment when he saw my face. Then he raised an eyebrow and smiled slightly. "Hey." His cherry blossom-colored lips curved into a smile, like a peach blossom blooming in winter. In that brief moment when our eyes met, I only had one thought. This man is really handsome. That was the first time I met Damian. But unfortunately, as beautiful as that first meeting was, everything that came after was just as humiliating. I would wake up with tears in my eyes, unable to sleep again, staring at the ceiling until dawn. I started having insomnia, staying awake all night. Eventually, I grew terrified of nightfall. I couldn't help but think, what are Damian and Freya doing right now? And then I would be driven mad with anger. I knew something was wrong with me, but I couldn't help it. Damian's betrayal felt like a knife in my chest, pinning me in a frozen wasteland. I could only watch helplessly as the warm blood drained from my body, until all that was left was my chest frozen in a mix of blood and ice. This went on for a month before I sluggishly realized something was wrong with me. So when a headhunter approached me again, I didn't turn them down. No one could save me. I had to save myself. The new company offered me a decent package, starting as a vice president, but the workload was overwhelming, and I worked late every night until 11 or 12. I was exhausted every day, falling into bed and sleeping like a log as soon as I got home. I didn't even have time to check Freya's lovey-dovey posts on social media anymore. Damian started appearing less and less in my dreams, replaced by endless reports piling up like snow, burying me. After 3 months of this non-stop cycle, I finally had 2 days off. When I saw Freya again, I realized with a dull surprise that I wasn't as hurt as before. There was still a dull ache in my chest, but the pain was gone. I looked up and realized I hadn't thought about Damian in a long time. Time truly is the best medicine. The wound I once thought would never heal had finally started to scab over. Chapter 9. Although I had tried my best to avoid any news related to Damian, I still occasionally heard his name when I went out to dinner with mutual friends. Someone asked, "Aren't they supposed to be getting engaged by now? They've been together for so long." I saw Freya post a picture of a ring on WeChat the other day, saying how pretty it was. Was that a hint to Damian? Another friend, who was closer to them, snorted. Yeah, right. Bai's been losing his mind lately. I don't think they'll last much longer. Why? It's because Freya is too controlling. This friend, who I was closer to, scoffed. She stole him from someone else. So now she's paranoid that someone will steal him from her. Back then, Bai was messing around behind Elena's back with her. And now she thinks he'll cheat on her with someone else. She watches him like a hawk. Every time Bai goes out to eat, she calls him 800 times. If he doesn't answer, she shows up looking for him. Once, right in front of all of us, they got into a fight. Bai said she was crazy, told her she was sick in the head. Freya accused him of not answering because he was guilty, said that after all she had sacrificed for him, if he didn't treat her right, she'd drag him down with her. She acted like a complete psycho. Bai's been looking worn out lately. Serves him right. He brought this on himself. I didn't expect things to turn out this way. When I checked Freya's social media, sure enough, the lovey-dovey posts were gone. Instead, she was posting sad quotes in the middle of the night. It seemed their relationship really was in trouble, but it had nothing to do with me anymore. I thought about it and decided to delete and block them both. I used to want to see their updates all the time, but now I didn't care anymore. It was time for me to completely forget Damian and start a new life. What I didn't expect was that I would see Damian again so soon. After the holidays, I landed a new investment project. The target company was Penguin, Damian's company. Looking at the investment proposal, I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. What kind of twisted fate is this? In a city this big, with millions of people, I couldn't avoid him. I declined the business dinner that night. This project must be very important to Damian, so he would probably attend in person. His mother had married into the family as a mistress, and he had an older brother and sister from his father's first wife. His father had also had several illegitimate children over the years. If Damian wanted to inherit the family business, he would have to stand out among all the children. I remembered hearing that the branch company he had taken over recently had invested in a failed project, and they couldn't recover the funds. The cash flow was almost depleted. He must be desperate for this money to get through the crisis. But I didn't want to see him. I thought the dinner would go on until late, but after only 2 hours, my colleague stormed back, furious. Those people at Penguin are insane. What happened? I looked up. My colleague slammed the investment proposal on the table, her face flushed with anger. Everything was going fine. Bai's attitude was polite enough, but his phone kept ringing, and he didn't answer. Halfway through dinner, Mr. Zhang went to the restroom and asked me to introduce the follow-up investment plan to Bai. I had just sat down next to him and said a few words when suddenly his girlfriend barged in. The moment she saw me sitting next to him, she lost it. She slapped me, yanked my hair, and called me a slut, accusing me of trying to seduce her boyfriend. My colleague was so angry she was trembling, pointing to the side of her head. Look what she did to me. I just got a hair transplant, and she ripped out so much. I was stunned. That's crazy. You've only met him twice. Exactly. But she insisted that Bai wasn't answering his phone because he was out flirting with other women. Said I wanted to steal her man because he had money. What the hell is wrong with her? I'm not even into men. I'm a lesbian. Damn it. Is she out of her mind? If my mom hadn't stopped me, I would have reported her to the police. The investment in Penguin was cancelled, because the colleague who got hit wasn't just anyone, she was the chairman's daughter. The chairman had her start from the bottom to get a basic understanding of the company before eventually taking over the family business. Since the chairman knew Damian's family, they didn't pursue legal action against Freya, but the investment still fell through. No matter how much Damian tried to salvage it, it was useless. His company's cash flow completely dried up, nearly leading to bankruptcy. In the end, his father had to step in to save the company. But this failure seemed to have made his father lose faith in him. He brought Damian's older brother into the head office, clearly intending to groom him as the new heir. Damian worked hard to turn the company around, and the next few projects he invested in yielded good returns. He was trying to regain his father's favor. Damian had his eye on a piece of land in the suburbs. He started courting investors everywhere, hosting dinners for many investment firms, planning a big comeback. It was in this context that we met again. Chapter 10. When we met again. Both Damian and I froze for a moment. After a few months apart, Damian still looked the same, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that made him appear as elegant as ever. Incredibly handsome. "How have you been during this time?" he asked, his gaze complicated as it met mine. I responded calmly, "Pretty good." Then, without saying more, I turned and took my seat. Throughout the meal, Damian's gaze kept drifting toward me, trying to engage me in conversation, but I brushed off all his attempts with brief, polite responses. Even now, seeing his face still filled me with a lingering unease and uncontrollable anger. I attributed this emotion to the trauma of those painful days. As for my feelings toward Damian, they had long since been worn away. Bit by bit, through countless sleepless nights, Damian's phone rang constantly during dinner. At first, he answered and whispered explanations, but eventually, he turned it off, his frustration plain for all to see. After several rounds of drinks, the door to the private room suddenly opened. Everyone turned to see Freya strutting in, wearing a tight, body-hugging dress, her top a skimpy strapless piece, revealing large portions of her tattooed roses. The once bright red whip marks had faded into pale scars. Damian's face changed instantly, and he stood up to pull her aside. "What are you doing here? Don't make a scene." Freya yanked her hand away. "Everyone else brings their wives to dinner, why don't you ever bring me out?" She scanned the room and saw me, her face twisting into a mocking, bitter smile. "Oh, I see. You're sneaking around with your ex-lover behind my back." Damian's subordinates quickly stood up to smooth things over, offering a chair. "The boss's wife is here. Please take a seat." Freya shot me a glance, then leisurely walked over and sat across from me, smiling. "Sorry to embarrass everyone. I'm Damian's girlfriend." The people at the table were seasoned business veterans, maintaining polite smiles as they greeted her. "What a perfect couple! Mr. Bai is so successful. Clearly there's a capable woman behind him." "Indeed. When's the wedding? We'd love to celebrate with you." Outwardly, the mood was jovial, but on closer inspection, there was a subtle awkwardness on everyone's faces. I overheard someone snicker, shaking their head. What kind of setting was this? Everyone here was dressed formally. We were all here for business, yet Freya showed up in a skimpy dress, more suitable for a nightclub. In a club, her outfit might have been fine, but here, it was downright embarrassing. Especially considering her status as Damian's girlfriend, it reflected poorly on Damian, making him seem less respectable by association. Judging by Damian's expression, this wasn't the first time such a scene had played out. But Freya, completely oblivious, filled her glass with expensive wine, standing to make a toast. "Thank you all for taking care of our Damian. I'll down this drink first, enjoy yourselves." "Cheers." "Haha, a strong woman indeed. Mr. Bai is a lucky man." Though their words were complimentary, their eyes were full of derision. No one cared about this dinner or the drinks. They were here to discuss business, negotiate deals. Freya's behavior, downing drinks in one go and speaking out of turn, was more fitting for a street-side food stall than a business dinner. Damian's face grew darker by the minute as he tried repeatedly to pull Freya away. "That's enough. Go home." But Freya didn't care. She only knew Damian was there to secure investments. So she started making rounds, offering toasts to everyone at the table. After a few drinks, she even started calling some of the older men at the table brother and sister. "Brother, I'll finish this drink for you. Please take good care of our Damian." One of the older businessmen, with a beer belly and a sleazy grin, replied, Of course. Of course." Freya gulped down the glass of white liquor and then fluttered over to the next person. As she passed me, she gave me a taunting look. The message in her eyes was clear. She not only took Damian from me, but but she also believed she could help him more in his work, surpassing me in every way. I lowered my head and chuckled, then glanced over at Damian. His expression had gone beyond grim. He looked absolutely livid. Today, his dignity had been utterly shattered. Everyone present now knew exactly what kind of woman his so-called girlfriend was. In truth, no one cared about personal lives. Plenty of people had indulgent lifestyles in private. But once those things were put on public display, it became a different story. Now, everyone would start to question Damian's judgment. At the end of the day, if he couldn't even manage the people close to him, how could he manage a company? Sure enough, the compliments continued, but when it came time to discuss investments, excuses of financial difficulties started to surface. Even the 2 investment deals that were almost finalized had their attitudes change. No one told Freya how embarrassing her behavior was. They all watched her, like an amusing spectacle, as she drank more and more, eventually collapsing, too drunk to stand. Once dinner was over, everyone left, one by one. No one bothered with Freya, not even Damian. Freya began to vomit, and after a while, there was nothing left in her stomach. She was retching and coughing so violently that tears streamed down her face. Damian just stood there, looking at her with cold disdain. I suddenly found it all a bit laughable. He had so readily thrown away our 5 years together for her. I had thought it was some grand love story between them. Turns out it was nothing more than this. I got up to leave and, after stepping out of the restroom, saw Damian leaning against the hallway wall, smoking. When we were together, he never smoked, because I told him I hated the smell. But now, he was lighting one cigarette after another, his face obscured by smoke, but his exhaustion was unmistakable. I walked past him, only for him to grab my wrist. Elena. His voice was hoarse, likely from smoking, and he looked down at me, a confused expression on his face. These days, have you been doing okay? I've been fine. I smiled. Work's going well. Life's been smooth. Nothing to complain about. But you don't look so great. Damian's lips curved into a bitter smile as he stubbed out his cigarette in the trash. Yeah, I haven't been doing well. I thought being with Freya would make me happy. When I was with you, I always felt a bit on edge because I knew someone like you, independent, dignified, you would never indulge my desires. And I cared about you. You were so good. I couldn't bear to treat you that way. But Freya is different. She's foolish, shallow, but she loves me wholeheartedly and is willing to do anything for me. I can do whatever I want with her. I don't need to feel pity for her because she doesn't need it at all. I thought being with her would be easier. But why am I feeling more and more exhausted now? I stayed silent. We both knew why he was tired. With a woman like Freya, enjoying the pleasure of her indulgence meant also bearing the burden of her lack of decorum. I had heard Freya had caused him a lot of trouble lately. Her family had gone bankrupt years ago. And ever since her parents found out she was dating Damian, they had been showing up at his company constantly, asking for money. Once, while Damian was in a meeting, the receptionist didn't let them in, and Freya's mother ended up assaulting her. Not to mention all the other troubles Freya had brought him. No wonder Freya hadn't had any new scars lately. Damian was too drained to even discipline her anymore. Damian liked my independence and the help my professional skills brought him. But he couldn't give up Freya's sensuality and wildness. Men always want it all. I regret it. Elena. Damian closed his eyes, bowing slightly in front of me. It was a posture of pleading. We used to have something so good. I ruined it all. I thought I liked Freya, but I've realized these past days that I only liked her body. I never cared about her soul, because I'm not interested in what kind of person she really is. The one I still like is you. Can you? No. I cut him off abruptly, meeting his gaze. Damian had beautiful eyes, dark, gentle, framed by long lashes. I had once been lost in their warmth countless times, but now, they only made me feel sick. Don't disgust me, Damian. His face paled. I sidestepped him and walked away. Chapter 11. Damian soon broke up with Freya. When a friend mentioned it to me, there was a hint of schadenfreude in her tone. I always knew they wouldn't last. Just look at Freya. She's not someone you can bring home to meet your parents. You treated him so well back then. practically working yourself to death for him. Are all men like this? Do they only appreciate what they can't have? Or do they all just prefer someone scandalous? I cut her off. I don't really want to hear about them anymore. Let's talk about something else. Maybe in the past, I would have been upset. But after seeing Damian that last time, I suddenly realized I had moved on. This man was never the person I truly loved. The one I fell for was nothing more than a fantasy, a facade. Still, I had a feeling that Damian and Freya's breakup wasn't as simple as it seemed. Freya was too crazy. I didn't think she'd let go so easily. Sure enough, just a few days later, our group chat exploded with messages. I glanced at it and saw that someone had shared screenshots of Freya's latest WeChat posts. Elena, look at what Freya posted. This is insane. In the screenshots, Freya had posted dozens of photos of Damian training her, along with medical records. The content was so explicit that it was shocking. There were all kinds of activities I had never even heard of, and Damian's cold expression contrasted sharply with Freya's obsessive one. She wrote a long post accusing Damian of abandoning her after all the years she had loved him. After everything she had done for him. Damian, we started fooling around when I was still young. Over the years, I've never refused anything you wanted. Even when you sent me to the hospital multiple times, I gave you my entire being, my spirit, my everything. Now you say you don't want me anymore, like I'm a dog you can just kick aside. Well, I'm telling you, no way. If I die, I'll drag you down with me. 3 exclamation points. I could practically see her face as she typed those words. This bizarre incident quickly spread like wildfire. It started with our local circles and then someone posted it on Weibo, and the situation spiraled out of control. Although Damian's company wasn't very large, his father was the head of the Buy Group, which was a big name nationwide. The scandal of a rich heir and his peculiar love life quickly made it to the top of the trending lists. Hashtag Buy Heir Special Fetishes. Hashtag Damian Freya. The chaotic scandal caused Buy Group's stock price to drop 7 points when the market opened the next day. Damian's father was furious and ended up having a stroke. While bedridden, with half his face paralyzed, he stepped down from his position and named Damian's half-brother as the new head of the Buy Group. The next day, Damian's brother officially replaced their father as chairman and immediately removed Damian from his position. He also appointed their biological sister as the new executive vice president. It was clear to everyone that the Buy family had completely abandoned Damian, who had once been their most promising child. He had been his father's favorite, but his failure in handling the situation with Freya had disappointed him time and time again. For people like them, playing around with women wasn't a big deal. It didn't matter how they did it. But being manipulated by a woman to the point where it caused a family scandal? That was sheer stupidity, and stupid people can't inherit the family business. Everyone knew Damian's older brother would take revenge on him. Damian's brother's mother had been driven to her death by Damian's mother, the former mistress who had replaced her. Damian was finished. The day Damian came to see me, it was during the last rain of autumn. The chilly drizzle was a reminder that winter was just around the corner. I opened the door to find Damian standing there, his shirt soaked through, his usually perfectly styled hair wet and plastered to his forehead. He was still handsome, but there was a hint of disarray about him. What are you doing here? Do you need something? Damian looked down for a long time before a bitter smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Where else can I go? I remained silent. Damian had been the once acknowledged heir of the Buy family and had run the company for so long. I didn't believe for a second that he had nothing left. He was just playing the victim. If there's nothing else, I'm closing the door. Damian blocked the door, speaking hurriedly. Wait. Just let me say 2 things. Go ahead. I know I was terribly wrong. Damian lowered his eyes. When I was young, everyone called me the child of a mistress. Then, as my father's illegitimate children kept popping up, I often saw my mother crying alone at night. Back then, I swore I'd never become like my father. He laughed, but there was no joy in it. But in the end, I did become like him. I was so busy trying to prove myself to my father, to compete for the family business. My father had so many children, and the constant scheming was exhausting and overwhelming. Honestly, when I was with you, I truly wanted to cut things off with Freya, but when I was under so much mental pressure, I needed an outlet. I knew you would never accept it. And Freya came to me and told me not to feel guilty. She promised you'd never find out. And I could do whatever I wanted with her. I lost my mind. At first, I thought it would just be that one time. That I wouldn't make the same mistake again. But this kind of thing is addictive. Once, twice, 3 times, I kept telling myself to stop. But I couldn't. His voice trembled. I couldn't stop. The motion sensor light in the hallway flickered a few times before going out completely. In the dim light, I saw the faint glimmer of tears in Damian's eyes. I know I wronged you, but Elena, I truly love you. I truly regret it. In these past few days, I've realized that what I felt for Freya was just physical desire. After all these years, you're the only one I've ever loved. I'm begging you, just give me one more chance. I won't hurt you again. Just for the sake of everything we've been through. Damian had been born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And for years, everything had gone his way. He had always been admired and adored. I had never seen him so humble. To be honest, I believed Damian had once loved me. I had seen that love in his eyes. But how much did he love me? Really? He had chosen Freya over me because she allowed him to indulge his desires. And now that he was tired of Freya, he had come back to me. His love was always calculated. In truth, the only person Damian ever loved was himself. Damian reached out to take my hand, and I glanced at his wrist. There were faint red marks on his pale skin. I froze and took a step back. What are those? Chapter 12. Things didn't end as quickly as I had hoped. Instead, they soon reached a new climax. The all-powerful internet sleuths uncovered another layer of the breakup between Damian and Freya. My mom works at the city hospital, and I heard that the second son of the Bai family came in for a checkup. Turns out he has syphilis. It seems like it's already at stage 2. Netizens immediately flooded the comments. Serves him right. With how promiscuous he was. Who else would get sick if not him? The woman really had terrible luck. After being used for so long, she even got infected. Now she's been dumped just like that. It's truly miserable. Then, a user with a somewhat familiar profile picture revealed more. Do you think the woman's any better? She's the one who infected the guy, not the other way around. I know the guy in real life. He originally had a girlfriend of 5 years, and they were very much in love, even planning to get engaged. But this woman snatched him away. Of course, the guy isn't innocent either. He was secretly involved with this woman behind his girlfriend's back. But this time, it happened when the two of them had a fight. The woman got so angry that she went to a bar alone to drink. She ended up getting drunk and fooling around with many people, which is how she got infected. The guy didn't know about it and got infected as well. At first, he thought it was just an allergic reaction. By the time he found out, it was too late. He checked the bar's surveillance footage, and the woman couldn't deny it. The guy was so furious he almost had a stroke. And that's why he insisted on breaking up. It's a story where everyone's awful. Except for the ex-girlfriend, she's the real victim. I stared at the post for a while before recognizing that it was from a mutual friend of Damian and me. Someone who had sympathized with me when Damian broke up with me. What she said must have been true. I hadn't expected things to turn out like this. The internet exploded. And for days Damian and Freya were trending, with people condemning their chaotic private lives and shameless morals. Friends around me were also talking about them. They were completely socially ruined. The last time I saw Freya was in the hospital. I had gone to visit a sick friend, and when I opened the door, I almost didn't recognize the person before me. In the cramped 6-person room, every patient was surrounded by concerned family members. Freya, however, was curled up in the corner, completely alone. She had lost a lot of weight, and her hospital gown hung loosely on her frail frame, with her shoulder bones protruding. Her clothes were tightly wrapped, but the skin that was visible was covered in red blotches and even sores. She had never been truly beautiful, but there had always been a vibrant charm about her. Now, she looked like a lifeless shell, staring blankly into space. The other patients were whispering and casting strange glances at her. I overheard a middle-aged woman behind me arguing loudly with a nurse. How could you put us in the same room as someone with a filthy disease? Who knows if she's contagious? And who knows what other diseases she has? The woman was clearly unhappy about sharing a room with Freya and spat on the floor in disgust. What a filthy tramp! Freya didn't seem to hear any of it. She remained motionless. It wasn't until I finished visiting my friend and was about to leave that she spoke. Her voice was hoarse. Nothing like the seductive tone she once had. Elena. I still won. Her eyes were fixed on me, her cheekbones protruding, making her look like a ghost risen from hell, and she let out a dry laugh. Damian chose me, not you. He loves me. So in the end, I won. I won't let him come back to you. I won't let you two be happy. Even if you get back together, he'll always remember me. He'll never forget me. I looked at her, feeling no anger, only deep pity. This woman had spent her entire life living for others. Damian had become the pillar of her existence. She loved Damian, but she had never loved herself. I calmly replied, if thinking that makes you feel better, then so be it. Then, I closed the door and walked away, hearing her ghost-like screech behind me. Elena. Then the sound of things being knocked over and curses rang out. Shut the hell up, you miserable hag. As I walked down the hallway, I unexpectedly saw a familiar figure at the pharmacy. Familiar, yet so vastly changed. Damian? I called out cautiously. The person stiffened and slowly turned around to glance at me. The once bright and gentle eyes, like a calm lake, were now as dead as stagnant water. Then, as if startled, he yanked up his coat to cover his face and bolted through the crowd, fleeing in panic. I stood there, stunned. Damian had always been proud, confident, and full of spirit. I had never seen him so defeated. He looked much the same, but the life force that had once animated him seemed entirely drained. He was like a walking corpse. Since finding out about his illness, Damian hadn't contacted me. Perhaps he knew how I felt, or maybe he didn't want me to see him in such a pitiful state. I'd heard that his older brother had kicked both Damian and his mother out of the family with nothing. Their father, Mr. Bai, still doted on his favorite son and beloved woman and regretted what had happened. He even tried to regain control of the company, but it was too late. His eldest son had already placed his own people in key positions, and using this opportunity, swiftly took control of the entire board of directors and, subsequently, the entire Bai Corporation. He paid an exorbitant amount to keep Mr. Bai in a private hospital, where everyone praised him for his filial piety, but it was no secret that it was a form of soft imprisonment. The shift in power had already happened. The era of Mr. Bai was over, and he could no longer protect his favored woman and son. Damian wasn't just kicked out. He was also stricken with this disease. By the time he discovered it, it was too late. The treatment wasn't very effective. I'd heard that in its later stages, the disease could even invade the bones and central nervous system, eventually becoming fatal. After losing his reputation and career, Damian had also lost his health. In a single night, he lost everything. The once golden boy. How could he endure such a blow? Friends spoke in hushed tones about how miserable his life had become, but seeing it with my own eyes still stirred up a complex mix of emotions in me. But who could he blame? From beginning to end, these were all his choices, and he had to bear the consequences alone. Chapter 13. When the lake in the park began to thaw, I received a new appointment from the head office. They had established a new branch in Italy and wanted me to go and serve as the CEO. I thought about it for a few days and decided to accept. In the past, my life revolved around Damian. Now that everything was over, it was time for me to start anew. As the plane flew through the clouds, I looked out the window. The countless lights on the ground formed a vast expanse, like a sea of stars rising from the earth. Soon, those stars were swallowed up by the rushing clouds, and after a while, everything outside became a blur. I didn't know how much time had passed, but when I opened my eyes again, a beam of orange light streamed in through the window. I turned my face slightly. Outside was a brilliant sunrise. The night completely left behind. The rays of light pierced through the clouds, rushing to squeeze through the small window, falling warmly upon me. I smiled and took out my phone to capture the moment. A new day had dawned.